In this video, I'm going to give you a list of my favorite self-learning resources that anyone can find. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So as promised, and many of you have requested, I am going to make this video and give you a list of my favorite learning resources. Now we have a couple categories here. We have online resources, and then we have book resources or physical resources. As you can see, I have books stacked all over my piano, so I remember to talk about them. So let's go ahead and start with our online resources. Now, the first group we have within online resources are YouTube channels, and I have 4 YouTube channels that I would like all of you to be aware of. Number 1 is Josh Wright. Now, this is a great channel. He has hundreds of videos. A lot of them are tutorials on specific pieces, but he also has a lot of videos that talk about alleviating tension or problems that he's had in the past and how he sort of overcome those problems. He has a doctorate in piano performance, so he really knows his stuff, and I would highly recommend any of you watch his videos. Now, number 2 is a channel called Piano from Scratch. Now, this channel is a little bit different in its focus. He teaches a lot of more general music concepts, things that can help if you're learning more popular kinds of music or jazz or things like that. He teaches a lot of chords, scales, improvisation, as well as many other things. So definitely recommend checking out that channel. Now, channel number 3 on our list here is Cedarville Music, which is run by a teacher by the name of John Mortensen. If you've never heard of Dr. John Mortensen, definitely recommend checking out Cedarville Music. Now, he has a doctorate in piano performance as well, and he has a lot of really great information about technique and overcoming and alleviating tension and whatnot. He also teaches extensively on improvisation, which is super cool and interesting as well, but a lot of his videos, like I said, talk about technique, which is absolutely fabulous. He even has a series where he's just sort of walking through a couple different pieces and talking about just everything to do with the piece, with the rhythm, technique, etc. And they're really just very valuable videos, okay? So the last YouTube channel on our list is Pianist Magazine. This channel has a number of different teachers that will teach and in their videos, but the main teacher that I really love watching is Graham Fitch. If you've never heard of him, definitely recommend checking them out. Now, if you just search for the Pianist YouTube channel, most of the videos that pop up are videos where Graham is teaching. And he teaches, I love his teaching style, and also he talks about a lot of technique concepts and ways of alleviating tension, and I've definitely got a ton of value out of those videos. So definitely recommend checking out all 4 of these YouTube channels. Okay, now we have another online resource, which is an online theory text. Now, many of you may not have thought that you needed an online theory text, but understanding theory, of course, is incredibly important to understanding and being able to play music well. And so I would definitely recommend checking this out. Now, the book is called Music Theory for the 21st Century Classroom, and it's just online. It's free for anyone. And what's really, really cool about this book, which was written by my theory professor at the university I went to, is that it has practice sheets, it actually has downloadable assignments that you can complete, and it's just a really, really great resource for anyone, and it's free, so you don't have to pay like $200 for a really good music theory textbook. All right, now we go on to the next category, which is book or physical resources. Now, the first subcategory within here, we have reading and theory resources. So I have a whole group of books here. Now, the first book is called Improve Your Sight Reading. Now, sight reading is a super important concept that we all need to be able to do better. And these books I've found, especially this particular series by Paul Harris, is incredible for this because he sort of adds new things periodically so that you're getting really good at the basic sort of concepts, and then they add a new concept, new keys, new time signatures, new rhythms, etc. So really, really good. And I believe it goes from level 1 to level 10, so you can sort of progressively get better and better at your sight reading skills. The next sight reading book is Sight Reading and Rhythm Every Day. And this is by Helen Marialis and Kevin Olson. And this again is a really, really good series. They have daily sight reading projects to do and rhythm assignments and all kinds of stuff so that you can really improve both your reading skills as well as your rhythmic recognition, which is really, really important. Now, moving on, we have more book theory resources. And the first one we have by Nancy and Randall-Faber is the Scale and Chord book that goes along with the Piano Adventure sort of method series. Now, this is book number 2, but book number 1 is also good. Book number 1 is more 5-finger scale patterns, whereas this is 1-octave scale patterns and arpeggios. Now, what I really love about this book is that they have challenges for every single key. So you can take the scale that you've learned and now you get to experience it in a more musical context that's a little bit challenging, so you can kind of see how the scales or the arpeggios kind of go into a more musical context. They also have chords and harmonic progression exercises. So this is an excellent book. I would recommend any of you around this kind of intermediate level definitely check out this book. The next resource, and this might surprise you, this is also written by Randall-Faber and it's called Hanon-Faber, the New Virtuoso Pianist. Now again, this is going to surprise you because I'm not really a super big fan of Hanon, but I am a fan of this book because for anyone who wants to practice Hanon, this book is the book for you. What I love about this book is that he doesn't just give you the exercises with a few upgraded little edited bits here and there. He actually gives you exercises that precede some of the Hanon exercises to sort of work up to understanding how to apply good rules of motion and efficiency and technique to those exercises. In one of our last videos, we talked about technical exercises and how you have to understand how to practice them, and this is exactly what that does. And so this is an excellent, excellent book if you're interested in practicing Hanon. Okay, so moving on, we have some kind of score reading books. Now, score reading is basically reading more than 2 staves, right? So we're reading music that's written by other instruments. And so this is actually kind of much more advanced, but this is really good for just improving your reading skills at the piano. So for instance, this book, Preparatory Exercises in Score Reading, has a lot of music that's written in some of the different C clefs. And so it can be really, really challenging to read. And especially for someone who wants to really stretch their reading skills, this is an excellent resource. And then the other skill or score reading book that I have is Score Reading Exercises in 3 and 4 parts. And this little book is an incredible, incredible challenge for myself. So this will really help you stretch your reading skills. Okay, now the last resources that we have here are rhythmic or rhythm resources. Now this seems like the kind of thing that I think a lot of us can think, well, you know, my first year I focused on rhythm, but now I've got it and I'm good. It's actually quite surprising how, even I remember a few years back, I went through a few of these books to just sort of preview them for my students, and I found that some of these exercises were actually quite challenging and actually helped me improve my rhythm in my sight reading for my students quite a bit. So we have Basic Rhythmic Training by Robert Starrer, and then we have Rhythmic Training, which is sort of the advanced counterpart to this. Now, these 2 books, again, for just practicing and learning rhythms, and let me tell you, some of the rhythms get really complicated, tapping 2-handed rhythms and all kinds of interesting things. He even shakes it up at different parts where one hand is supposed to be softer than the other hand, or you're supposed to emphasize beat 1 and then play or tap beats 2 and 3 a little bit lighter. So this can be quite a challenge and is a these are both great resources for anyone wanting to improve their rhythmic skills. Okay, so now what we have is we have technique resources. Now, some of these resources may be more or less helpful depending on what you want to learn and where you want to go, but that's why I thought I'd just put all of them together. So the first resource we have is professional piano teaching. Now you might be thinking, well, I don't really want to be a piano teacher. Why would this book be helpful to me? Well, largely the reason is that anyone who wants to learn more about music or understand music really well, this book is really, really good for that. Because especially for someone who maybe has problems and doesn't know how to approach their problem, you kind of have to be your own piano teacher if you're learning on your own, which a lot of these resources are sort of geared towards those musicians. So this book is going to be really helpful. She talks about a lot of issues that people have, how to overcome those issues, etc. Now, we also have Professional Piano Teaching Volume 2, which focuses more on the intermediate and advanced sort of grades or levels. And she has a great section on technique where she talks about alleviating tension and then recognizing signs of tension and all those kinds of things. So these books, though a little bit different in their scope, are excellent, excellent books. Okay, now moving on, and now I think I've talked about this book before, What Every Pianist Needs to Know About the Body. Now this I would recommend every single one of you buy for sure. This is an excellent book that talks about many, many of the concepts that we talk about on the channel all the time. And I've actually gotten a lot of my material from this book, though I've learned most of it from many different sources over the years. This is an excellent book. It talks about how the body moves and how it works in places of balance and how to understand actually why you'll struggle to perform leaps really accurately if you're not sitting up really straight. So this is an excellent book. Now, moving on, this book was a real eye-opener for me, Piano Technique Demystified by Neil Stannard. Now, this book basically attempts to demystify the concept of technique, generally speaking. So instead of thinking of technique as a sort of ethereal thing that you just sort of build without really understanding how or why you're doing it, this book sort of quantifies it, talks about, you know, what does it take to really play a scale? What are the motions required? And so this is a really excellent book. Now, he also has a follow-up book called Mystified No More, which just goes further into detail. Now, the first book is definitely more helpful than the second book, but I would recommend both of them probably as books that would be very, very helpful. We have two more books here, and this is a little bit different, but I wanted to include it. It's called Pedaling Colors in Sound by Catherine Ferrisy. Now, this book, of course, is about pedaling. What I like about this book is that it has a bunch of really simple assignments or projects that you can basically work on or complete to improve your pedaling skills. So pedaling is one of those things that I think tends to get overlooked a lot, but it's actually incredibly important. So this is, like I said, a little bit different, but an excellent book. Now she actually has an advanced book that's, you know, much thicker than this, where she goes into extreme detail, and it's an excellent book, again, called Artistic Pedaling, which is also another one that you can look at if you complete this and it's a little bit simple, then you could go on to the next book. Okay, so the last book we have here is actually another teaching book, and this is called The WellTempered Keyboard Teacher. Now, this book, I would say, is probably not for most of you. You probably will buy it and then think, you know, like, I don't know why I bought this book. It's not really all that helpful. I wanted to mention it because I do know that some of you are piano teachers and some of you would find this helpful. One thing that I find extremely helpful as a teacher is she talks a lot about the learning psychology of teaching and how to go about teaching things depending on the age of your student. So different interesting things about that. She talks about technique. She talks about a lot of just general concepts. So this was probably more for those of you who might be teachers, but I would also recommend this as a learning resource for those of you who are teachers. Okay, so now we have actually a bonus book that I grabbed last minute, and this is First Lessons in Improv. Now, this book, for those of you who are interested in learning more about how to improvise, because improvisation is thought of a lot of times as just sort of like you either got it or you don't, but it's actually not. You can learn through a step-by-step process of how to go about improvising so that you know how something's going to turn out before you actually play it. So this is an excellent book that I wanted to mention. Then within our physical resource category, we have an other subcategory here, which is an ear training program that you can purchase and download called MacGamut. Now, this was required when I was at university for my ear training classes. It's a little bit annoying in certain ways because all of the sounds are MIDI sounds that sometimes can be a little bit hard to distinguish different octaves and things like that. But for the most part, I think it was like 35 bucks. It's a really great program for just training your ear and learning how to hear different intervals and different quality of chords, or even just dictating down melodies. It has all kinds of really, really great resources for that. So definitely recommend it. Okay, so that pretty much concludes this video. Now, all of these resources will be linked down below in the description. So if you're interested in purchasing any of them, you can go and find those links in the description. Now, I hope that this was helpful, and I hope that at least every one of you can find one of these resources to be really, really helpful. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.